Welcome to the Young, Dumb, and in Love podcast, where we talk about all things marriage.
Our goal is to help equip you to have a marriage that is better than you have ever imagined by sharing real life experiences, getting into the nitty gritty, and sharing practical ways you can start today. Let's dive in.
I was told my entire life that I should just say sorry now and say, I'm sorry for everything I've ever done now, yesterday, tomorrow, and 10 years down the road.
Who taught you that?
So many people from the generation above me. Second of all.
You mean as a husband?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah. Just apologize now. Say, I'm sorry for everything you've ever done and that you're going to do. And just know that it's always going to be there. I'm like, what if I just lived a life where I don't have to apologize much? I think that's probably better
You
advice.
sound terrible.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness. You lost your voice.
It's almost completely
Merry
gone.
Christmas.
It's almost gone.
That's all I have to say. No, I'm saying Merry Christmas.
Oh.
Merry Christmas. It's like Christmas.
Yes, it is. Merry Christmas.
Halloween is over.
Thank God.
So now it's just Christmas. Pumpkins went in the trash.
Oh yeah. I threw those puppies
They're gone.
away. My daughter was like, Daddy, what are you doing?
We already started putting Christmas lights
They're
up.
rotten. They're going rotten, girl. We got to throw these away.
It is Christmas time. Julian has lost his voice, so you'll be used to just hearing from me anyway all the time. So
hey, I'll do my very best to talk with a deeper voice.
Right? Oh my gosh.
This
But
is
Merry
this is
stinking Christmas. I am so excited.
Yes, this is the voice that I would call you on the phone and be like, hey,
Call you
girl.
on my cell
Yeah, when I'd call you
phone.
back in the day and be like, hey, girl, how you doing? And you'd be
now
like,
when I
why do you
need-
talk like that on the phone?
Yeah, right. Like, hey, it's me, Julian. So true.
But we are excited about Christmas.
We are excited. I'm really excited about Christmas. I'm like, want to record this podcast so I can go to Home Goods. Like, as soon as it's
You're
over.
like, hurry, let's
I'm like, let's go.
do
Okay,
this
so it's
thing.
going to be a quick
We
item.
need
No,
to
I'm
go
just
to
kidding.
Home Goods so I can buy some more Christmas
I need
stuff.
more Christmas things. I'm definitely channeling all my buddy, the elf energy
Oh, I
this
love
year.
that
I
movie.
am extra about it. I don't know why. I'm just extra excited.
Love that movie so much.
Anyway, this week we are going to talk a little about forgiveness and marriage and really what that looks like. And so yeah, forgiveness.
So what does that look like? You have to forgive me all the
No,
time.
that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That is not true. But we do, I think that over time, it's hard to ask for forgiveness because it's hard to admit when you're wrong. And I think that's kind of the thing. It's hard to ask for forgiveness because if you're asking for forgiveness, not only are you asking for forgiveness, but you're admitting like I was wrong, so I'm asking for forgiveness. So
true.
it's like it's a lot, But we are commanded to forgive. Like it's so important that we, forgive each other in marriage. And I think that forgiveness can be a hard thing to wrap your mind around because when you forgive, a lot of people will be like, well, if I forgive, then I have to forget.
Yeah.
Then I have to forget what happened or, whatever that looks like. And, I would say that is not always true.
Yeah, for sure.
Not really true at all. Like just because you decide to forgive doesn't mean you're automatically going to forget, you know? So
and I would say forgive and learn because you're forgiving, you're forgiving from something that happened and you're asking for forgiveness for something that happened and you're going to learn from whatever that is that happened.
Yeah.
So forgive and learn rather than forgive and forget.
Right. Well, and really, I think what people are saying is like, they feel like if they forgive, that they have to forget.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, we had actually this week someone say, hey, if I forgive my spouse, do I just have to forget all of the things they've ever done?
No.
And that's the thing is no, it doesn't mean that you're just naive. And I think a lot of times if you're the forgiver, like you're the one who's, like, okay, yes, I will forgive you. I'll forgive you. You feel like you're you're being naive or you're saying, oh, it's okay if you do that again, and that those things aren't true.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of going to have a little conversation around that today. We might even have a follow-up conversation about it next week because sometimes it's like we have the first conversation and then we realize like, man, there's a lot of things we could still answer, a lot of things we could still wrap our minds around. But I kind of wanted to start with these things, what I feel like forgiveness is not.
Mm-hmm.
So forgiveness is not forgetting.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiveness is not taking a step backwards.
Yep.
And forgiveness is not weakness.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of like, as I was thinking through forgiveness, like I think sometimes we feel like it's we're being weak when it's like really you're being strong, and it's,
For sure.
you know, both sides asking for forgiveness, you know, and being willing to forgive. And that's like such a huge, because like you could be talking about something really simple, really small, like, oh, I forgive you because you forgot to do something you said you were going to do that's really small. You know,
For sure.
stop by the store, or
But
like silly.
But how many times do those small things build up into something so much bigger?
Yeah.
So it's important
Like
to
not
forgive
sweating.
the small things and not sweating the small stuff, because
If you allow the
eventually,
little things,
if you
they,
allow
like,
them to
pile
build
up.
up on, they pile up, and before you know, you have a mountain of unforgiveness that needs to be broken down.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, and I think about, you know, like if you can learn to forgive quickly, and in the small things, then when they are bigger things, you've exercised that forgiving muscle. You know what I mean? Because if you're not a very forgiving person and something really big happens, it's going to be harder to forgive. But if you kind of just consistently try to live in a space of like, I'm just going to be quick to kind of forgive or let things go in a way, and kind of not sweating the small stuff, you know, because I think, you know, when I'm thinking forgiveness, I'm thinking of like those bigger things that happen, like those really painful, hard experiences. But absolutely, like the small things, like when we get bitter about the small things, you know?
So you said forgiveness is not forgetting.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is not a step backwards. Forgiveness is not weakness.
Yeah.
So what is forgiveness then?
What is forgiveness? So I kind of have a few thoughts, and then just like wrote down some scripture too, because I feel like so much of what I obviously what I live by is, you know, scripture. And this is one, I know it was in Colossians, and we'll put these in the show notes, but bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And all of these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is, when you have a grievance or you're frustrated with your spouse or they need to be forgiven for something, you know, it's like we are commanded to forgive each other. You know, and when you want your marriage to be thriving and you want to have a healthy marriage, like you're going to have to forgive, and you're going to have to forgive often, and you're going to have to be quick to forgive, you know, because anytime you allow a stronghold in your marriage, you know, you're just allowing deeper things to continue on.
That's
you know
so
what I
real.
mean? And so it's like unforgiveness, you know, we've all heard it, like unforgiveness is, what is it? Like drinking poison, but expecting someone else to, have you heard that saying before?
I think I have. Yeah, I think I have.
I think that's how it goes. I'm
that
probably
makes
wrong.
sense.
But
I mean,
it's like,
even if it's not real, that sounds
you're
really
drinking
good.
poison, but expecting someone else to be
die.
the one to suffer. But because really when you harbor the unforgiveness in you, it's actually hurting you the most.
Yeah, so true.
You know, and it becomes a really toxic cycle of unforgiveness, you know, because you're not forgiving your spouse is living in that they don't forgive me anyway feeling. And it's
so
like,
why does it matter?
yeah, or like, man, they're never going to forgive me. They're never going to be able to move on. And so it's almost like if you picture it like it's spinning around and around like a wheel of, you know, I don't forgive you. And then they're feeling like I'm not forgiven. So how are we supposed to move on from this? You know, and a lot of it is like that bitterness, you know, having that bitterness and that frustration.
Yeah.
You know, and so really forgiveness is freeing for you.
Yep.
When you forgive, and for them when you forgive them.
Yeah.
You know.
For sure.
What do you have anything you want to add to that?
It's time to be real.
Oh my gosh. What are you, like 15?
Yeah. Got to send it to all my friends.
Gotta send it to my friends. Anyway, I forget.
yeah, I mean-
I forgive you. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, it is a hamster wheel.
It is.
When you harbor the unforgiveness inside of
Yeah.
your heart, and you're going to continue to feel and build what you're feeling even more every single day.
Yeah.
And whatever a lot of times we talk about what drives things between our marriage.
Yeah.
So what is coming in between me and you? A lot of the time it is unforgiveness. It's
Yeah.
the unspoken. It's the things that happened that we never talked about, that we never worked out, that we
Yeah.
never asked for forgiveness from, and then gave in forgiveness for.
Right.
And so the more you just continue to pile those up, it's just going to become a bigger issue. And so you said it earlier, though, it's so
Yeah.
important to have continual forgiveness, even in the small things, and continual asking for forgiveness is a part of that too. And that's what asking for forgiveness is one of the, I know my voice, just, we're going to get past this. But asking for forgiveness
Yeah.
is honestly like, let's just be real. It's
Is it
probably
hard?
one of the hardest things in the entire world.
Do you think that's like personality wise though? Because I have to be
100%?
like,
Yeah, no, I think it's totally.
do you think it's
I think it's
harder for
personality.
you than it is for me?
Yeah, I think it's personality. I think it's the way you grow up.
Yeah.
I think it's
And like
past
what it was,
experiences, you know.
how it was maybe shown to you, or like,
For sure.
what would be the word? Like, not shown,
Well-
you know, like if you saw your parents or people in your family be like quick to forgive, or like, oh, I'm sorry about
If you
that. Or, oh
grew
my gosh,
up
I'm
in
so sorry
that
about that.
type of environment, yeah, of
Then
course
yeah,
it's
it'd
going to be way easier for
because
you.
you've set that, like,
Yeah.
you know,
But when you maybe are around situations where they hang, even though you've asked for forgiveness and they say they forgive you, but they still hang it over you, like, well, you remember when?
yes.
And when we have that kind of attitude towards the situation, of course it's going to be, I don't want to ask you for forgiveness because you're going to just hang it over me.
Yeah.
And when you're hanging something over my head all the time, it just makes me not ever want to even try to do things better. Right.
Yeah.
And so, and obviously I'm not talking about you, but I'm just saying in general,
generally speaking, yes.
when someone hangs it over your head, like you're more
I mean,
likely
you say
not
you're
to
not
want
talking about
to-
me, but I've
Yeah, I mean,
I've done that.
for sure. I think
So-
I think we have both have done that, but it's not the way we've like,
The way we want to operate or how we operate now,
Yeah.
17 years later. But
for sure.
I think that was kind of one of the things I wanted to unpack. And I think something that can be really hard to really like explain or wrap your mind around. But when a spouse comes with a pure heart and really is asking for forgiveness for a situation, then, you know, the one who's going to be forgiving them, now you have this responsibility to really forgive.
Yeah.
So not only now they have come to you with true repentance, you know, their heart is pure. It's not, you know, they're not like just saying it so you'll get over it, but they're really going to strive to move forward.
Yeah.
Now the one who's forgiving also has to be
Yeah.
moving forward. Like if you say,
The
okay, I
responsibility.
forgive you.
Yeah.
Now I have this responsibility to be like, okay, like it may be painful and it may be hard, but I will continually forgive. It's not necessarily a momentary thing as humans. Like obviously with the Lord, when you go to the Lord and you're like, please forgive me, he says, yes, he forgives you, done. He is perfect.
Yeah.
You know, but our human nature is to kind of always go back to that frustrating or
Moment or-
maybe go back and bring it back up because we're feeling that insecurity or we're feeling that frustration or we're being triggered
Yeah.
in a way of like, oh, but this is how I feel. You know, so then we have to make a conscious decision to continually forgive. And it may not just be a momentary decision. It's like a continual decision. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
Because, you know, if I've said I forgive you and you're still walking in that forgiveness, you know, like you're still, you know, striving to do the right thing, but I am holding it over your head or I can't really forgive you. Like at that point,
Yeah.
I have to take
It's your
some responsibility
Yeah.
and be like, gosh, okay, what in me do I need to like really check, you know? And
So I think that's probably one of the the things that people would argue about forgiveness is, well, if I forgive them and they just keep doing it and I forgive them and I continue to forgive them, like you say,
Right.
like, how is this ever going to be a better situation?
I think what I'm saying is that if they are continually the person that has asked for forgiveness, if they're not going back and doing it over and over and over again, that's a bigger issue. Like they need to
that's where we go, okay,
that's like
I forgive you, but now we need to figure out the issue.
And
we need to work through the problem so that you don't have to come and ask for forgiveness anymore.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because what I'm saying is like, you may, if your spouse did something, they've asked you for forgiveness and it's that isolated incident. That's what I think is more. And then you can't let that isolated incident go.
Yeah.
Now, if they are a repeat offender, and it's constantly like, you're like, okay, listen, you've done this 20 times and I want to forgive you. I do forgive you, but you're not changing. So now that forgiveness feels like almost like it's being taken advantage of, and that's fair.
Very
and that's
fair.
not really what I'm addressing in that. I'm talking more like an isolated, circumstance. But if they continually, are, she'll just forgive me or he'll just forgive me. And so I'll just, ask for forgiveness. Then that's, like obviously a deeper issue and needs to be seriously addressed because
so they're two different things. There's a repeat offender.
Yes.
And you continue to forgive them and they just keep going. There's a bigger issue. You
100%.
need to work through that. Then there is, it's happened once, you've forgiven them, but for some reason you can't let it go.
Yes.
That's where she's saying continue to forgive.
Right.
In that sense. Like, so when you have feelings, you might have a feeling that comes up when they come around and you think about that moment and you're like, no, I've chosen to forgive them. I forgive them. I forgive them. It's constantly telling, really it's for you. It's not for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing, and there are, cause I think, a lot of people are like, well, they just keep doing the same thing. That's a deeper issue. Like you said, they just keep going back and doing the same thing. Well, then there's therapy that's needed or counseling or coaching or whatever that looks like, because if they don't deal with the root of the issue, they are most likely going to continue doing it.
For sure.
But forgiveness is freeing and it's a step forward. And that's really, I think, when you're like, the point is we want to move forward, not backwards,
so true.
And I think, here's the thing, like you have a rear view mirror. It's not that you don't see what happened,
for sure.
But when you're driving, if you're driving, but you're trying to drive forward, but you're looking in your rear view mirror all the time, right? Like you're going to get in an accident. Something's going to go wrong because you only see what's behind you. So you're like, that's all behind me. You have to keep your eyes forward. And I think that's kind of, as I'm seeing forgiveness, like the point is like, okay, now let's move forward and move through it, not go back to it.
Yeah.
And that's really the heart of forgiveness is like, let's move forward. Let's become better. Let's, be able to know that this happened. Like we're not going to forget about it,
Yep.
But we don't have to necessarily talk about it and bring it up all the time.
For sure. I think it's good to have it a part of your foundation, to have, cause like, it's like a roadmap. We've talked about that before.
Oh yeah. Like being able to say
like looking back and being like, hey, we've come a long way.
Absolutely.
Look at where we were, the things we did go through because of forgiveness, because of being able to move forward.
Yeah.
This is how far we've come. How awesome is that? Like look back and celebrate in that way. But don't look back and live in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's see what else I wrote down here.
Do you want me to take over? Because I got a great voice for it right now.
Well, if you have, I know it's so funny because I write a lot of the show notes, a lot of the notes or a lot of what content notes or whatever. But Julian today was like, oh, I have notes too. And I was like, yay, But then he's like, no, we'll just use your notes. Your notes are better. And I'm like, no, that's not the point.
Listen, I definitely have notes. I definitely have thoughts, but I'm working a lot right now. So I don't have the mental capacity to write it. But I do have the time to spare for this.
And I think too, it's like we talk about, like we want to extend to our spouse what we want extended to us, which is forgiveness in moments that we struggle or we say something or do
Yeah.
something that we know is not right and not okay,
Yeah.
and the beautiful thing is when we do this, we do set one, we set a great standard in our marriage, but then we also set a great example for our kids on being able to ask for forgiveness. And we ask our kids for forgiveness.
For sure.
I have asked both of my children to forgive me in moments that I wasn't acting the way that I should, whether I was short with them, and I think, or didn't give them the attention that they were deserving, or said I would do something for them and then maybe I forgot to do it. It's like I will get down on their level and say like, hey, you know what? I did forget. Or, hey, mommy was really impatient today. Like, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't talk to you like that, even when I am tired or even if I'm frustrated. And that's that muscle I'm talking about. It's like if you just become quick to say like, hey, I'm really sorry. Can you forgive me? I'm going to make sure that I am being kind to you. I should never say that, or do that, or whatever it is, whatever it looks like. You're showing them that it's okay to ask for forgiveness. Like, and you're just kind of setting that culture in your home of being quick to ask for forgiveness and quick to forgive.
Yeah.
Because both of my kids will look at me and be like, Mommy, yes, we love you. We forgive you. We know you're just tired, or, oh, we know you just had a long day.
Yeah.
But you're just setting a culture of grace and love, and that we are human, that we're not perfect, and that one day when our girls are married, even though one of them says she's never getting married and one of them can't wait to get married, and it might not be what you think, that they will be quick to ask for forgiveness and quick to forgive, their spouse.
For sure.
This is what I always laugh. I like, probably because I'm a little sassy in nature. Sometimes when like
a little
like this says in Proverbs, it says, do not say, I'll do to them as they have done to me. I'll pay them back for what they did. And I'm like, yeah.
You're like, I can.
Because, both of my, this makes me think of both my kids. Because obviously I'm scrappy. I feel like that's a good word for me. Scrappy.
It's a good word.
I grew up a little scrappy.
Yeah.
And both of my girls can be a little scrappy and like things they'll say.
They're very scrappy.
Like one of them will say something and I'm like, and then I'm like, oh
me
no,
and Brittany
that's
will look at each other
totally
like,
me. And I'm like, oh no,
I'll
that's
just point at her and go, that's you.
And I know that I'm scrappy, but I've also like learned how to refine that. But I think that's the other thing is we have to make sure that we're not trying to just repay like something that's not okay.
Well, and that's,
you know what I mean?
That's the stopping, slowing down, and thinking before you speak. Like it's something that you really had to work on,
Oh, I did for sure.
Because I mean, we have this saying in our house, and we know exactly what it means. Everybody in our house knows what it means. But anytime we go, okay, Gary Allen, we know that's the moment where Mama's getting a little scrappy.
That's because this is such a side story, but I am definitely the more confrontational one.
I'm pretty meek
in our marriage.
I'm like, I look at situations,
but
and
you're
I'm
just
like,
chill. Like most of the time, like not a lot gets Julian like frustrated or irritated. I am very much a justice seeking,
for sure,
right and wrong person.
Yeah.
And I always have been since I was a little girl. Like as long as I can remember, if boys were picking on my sister, like I literally clotheslined this kid and I pushed another boy, all boys, clotheslined one kid. I think I punched another boy one time for saying something to my sister. Like, listen.
In basketball, you were pretty feisty.
And I don't even know why I'm talking about this. Oh, but Julian comes upstairs one day and I'm
on the phone
in the bathroom, going to the bathroom. And he's like, babe, but like this is when we lived in Washington and now we lived in Arizona. He goes, yeah, the electricity company is calling and saying we owe money from our house we sold.
He has our account number.
He has our account number. He says we owe X amount of money. And I'm like, what? I paid all those. I have it all written down. And Julian's like, well, he's saying we owe him money and I need to pay him right now. And I'm literally on the toilet. And I'm like, give me the phone. So I like get up real quick.
Do your thing.
Do my thing. Wash my hands. Grab the phone. And I'm like, hello? And he's like, hi, this is Gary Allen from...
His name was Gary
whatever.
Allen.
And I'm like...
That's what he went with.
And I'm like, okay, what is the issue? And he explains what he explains. Well, you owe da 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 da, and if you don't pay it today, it's going to go to collections. And I said, I don't know who you are, but this is not true. I need to speak to your supervisor. I have it all written down right here. I pulled up the account. It says zero balance. I'm like, I may not be organized in all things, but this I do know. And he was like, ma'am, I just need you to pay the rest of your bill. And I said, listen to me, Gary Allen. I will not be paying this bill. So now the running joke is when they say Gary Allen, it means someone's getting feisty or about to be feisty, or it's a funny
Mom's
joke
about to just
Mom is
lay
about
it
to lose
down.
it.
Gary Allen.
Gary Allen.
It was one of the best nights of my life.
All the while, Julian would have just given our money to Gary Allen and he would have ran
give
off.
my money to him. I would never pay over the phone for something like that. I was like, pull up the account. Can we still sign in?
Sure. Anyway, so really what we want to say, all that, Gary Allen, really is that in our marriages, we have to be quick to forgive.
Yeah.
We have to cultivate a culture in our homes of being quick forgivers. Obviously, when it's a really deep issue, something that needs to be addressed, like, you know, that might take a little more time, but that the heart and the goal is to forgive and to move forward, you know, and I think that it can be really hard.
It's so hard.
It could be so hard because you have so much, like there's so much pain.
There's
and
so many
bitterness
different
and anger
variables
that can be around that situation, you know, because we're talking sometimes where these are really painful situations.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the day-to-day, forgot to do something or had a
sure.
sassy tongue and got in trouble, and so I have to say sorry. You know, those are the things that you can cultivate to become really easy, like to be able to
work
say
on
sorry.
those first because they're,
You know, but those
low-hanging
big
fruit.
things, like they're going to take a lot of prayer. They're going to take a lot of vulnerability.
Yeah.
They're going to take a lot of humility on both sides.
Yeah.
One, the offender,
A lot of healing.
I guess, if you want to call it, the person who needs to ask for forgiveness, they're going to have to be humble to come and say sorry.
Yeah.
And then as the one receiving it, like, you know, preparing your heart for that response and really asking the Lord to go before you in that, because sometimes it's like, I don't want to forgive you. Like I'm forgiving you because I'm commanded to forgive you, but I need the Lord to really like work in my heart, you know, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And that takes time.
Yeah.
You know, so much time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean you won't be triggered.
Oh, for sure.
And
that's probably one of the things that we've seen the most with people who have walked through really dark things that they've had to forgive, or that they chose. So I said they chose to forgive. Where there would be moments. Where everything's good, everything's rolling, everything's moving forward, and then all of a sudden, whether it's a person or a sound anything, or whatever it is, a smell, location, whatever. Yeah,
and if you've worked with any sort of triggers, trauma, and you understand trauma, then you know, like it could be
in an instant, and
like, it's blindsiding you. Like you're fine, everything's great, and all of a sudden you're like, why in the world is this like bothering me?
Yeah, and so on the other side, when that happens, say you're the one getting triggered and there's something going crazy in your mind and you're like, and those are the moments that are really going to test the one who asks for forgiveness, because it's going to be really easy in those moments to be like, really I thought you forgave me. How come you didn't move on? What is wrong with you? You know, it would be easy to revert to that because you're frustrated that you said you forgive me, but you're not acting like it. Where in the sense, we need to just be sensitive to the fact that this was traumatic, and there's going to be really moments where you have to take a step back and just be like, hey, I know this is really triggering for you, and I'm very sorry for that.
Yeah.
I hate that this is happening. Can we just do something? Like, can I just hold you?
That's really good.
I think I pray for you? Like right in those moments. If you are the
one who, that's so good, because we have sat with couples who have, had infidelity, is a big one I'm thinking of right now. And they have forgiven, the offender has asked for forgiveness.
And the relationship is better than it's ever been.
Really well.
Yeah,
and
better
then
than it's ever been.
Something triggers, the spouse. And I love what you're saying is that as the one who has asked for forgiveness, if you can take a step back and realize, like, even though I know they forgive me, this was painful for them.
Yeah.
And so it may be a continual healing. That doesn't mean they don't forgive me, because yes, they're choosing to walk in forgiveness, a continual forgiving.
So
you
true.
haven't reoffended, and so
Yeah.
that's different than like you reoffended and okay, that's, but being able to say like, I am really sorry for that again.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that you have forgiven me. I know this is still painful. That is such a great example of just like, that's humility. That is the reality of marriage is that some of the experiences are going to be extremely painful for your spouse.
Yeah.
And one thing I know, like, sometimes like therapists will say like, yes, of course the offender has, there's things to go on, but they remind that person like, hey, you're the reason we're in this spot. So you don't get to point fingers.
Yeah.
And that isn't to sound harsh, but you need to realize like, hey, I am why we're in this position. And so I need to understand that this is difficult for my spouse.
Yeah.
I have caused some very significant wounds that are going to take time to heal.
For sure.
And yes, they can forgive me and they are working towards that forgiveness, but that's time. And that is, it's like I say, it's a journey. It's not just this like, well, you just got to get over it.
Yeah,
well,
it's not
that's
flipping
not
over the card.
necessarily going to be the case,
For sure.
and when things do come up, so I think that's a really good point to remember. And if you're the spouse that has been the offender, like you have to try to be unoffendable when your spouse is like, that really hurts. And they come to you again, maybe down the road and say like, I'm having a hard time moving forward.
Yeah.
Like you have to be prepared that is the case.
Yeah. And that's where you go, okay.
Yeah.
You hear them.
Yeah.
You say, what do we need to do? Just ask the question. What do we need to do? Do we need to go sit with the counselor? Do we need to go talk to our pastor? I'm willing to do whatever it takes.
That's really good.
You know?
Well, I think like to have an example for like us, a me and you example is, several years ago, about 10 years ago or so, Julian made a decision for our family and it devastated me.
Yeah.
Devastated me. And, we did we did it and but I harbored a lot of bitterness and anger towards Julian for a really long time, a long time. And I didn't really necessarily see it as that, but it took some time. And then we kind of realized like, you don't necessarily trust my decision-making, you like me towards you.
Yeah.
And I had to forgive you for that. Like you said, sorry, but it took years. I mean, this was we didn't realize it was an issue.
It all circled back. And
but it was kind of a quiet issue, I guess.
For sure.
Like when you looked at we were like, oh, this is where it started. But it kind of started to build like different levels of anger towards you and resentment and lack of security, around our marriage. And it was kind of scary because I was like, I don't actually feel like I trust him to make the best decision for our family.
Yeah.
But when we had that conversation.
So true.
And, you're like, will you forgive me? Like, I'm so sorry. You're right. When I made that decision all those years ago, I kind of set off this
ticking time bomb.
Like I set off the, series of events that I didn't know would be the consequences. And I forgave him. I was like, of course I forgive you. And, I went with you willingly. I didn't want to, but I did. And, but then there were times since I have forgiven you that maybe you've made a decision or you've said something and it's brought me back to that place.
Yeah.
And I have said to you like, hey, when you do that, it makes me feel like that again.
Yeah.
And instead of you being like, you just need to move on. Get over it. You're like, ooh, babe, I'm sorry. Like, that's not my heart.
Yeah.
So it may be somewhat of a continual conversation.
For sure.
But as time goes on, they say like time heals all wounds. Yes and no, but time does help remove some of the energy out of those wounds if you've committed to healing,
For sure.
Do you have anything to say about
That was really
that?
good. No, nope. That was really good.
You're not going to cry, right?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
I
Not
didn't
at all.
make you cry.
I was going to ask you though,
Yeah.
what would be a good practice
Yeah.
for someone who is not as confident or out vocal or confrontational? So
As me?
to be the one like you're more like you're vocal, confrontational. Like
I don't know if I was always like that.
but you are now.
Okay.
So what would you say to someone who doesn't know, like has a harder time with asking for forgiveness? Like how
Asking for it or giving it?
Asking for it. So we've been talking about being, forgiving, but like there's another side of that. And a lot of people don't ask for forgiveness because they're scared of what would actually happen. They're nervous about the consequences, the response. They don't like confrontation. So, or they're just prideful,
Yeah.
And so what would be a good practice? Like what would be a good way for someone like that to really turn their head and start asking for forgiveness?
Yeah. Well, I think that when you realize that you asking for forgiveness is one between you and Jesus, and then once you've extended it to that person, it's really then becomes up to them. You've done your part. You know what I mean? And just like anything else, it's like you just have to practice it. Like you just start doing it. Like, you just recognize like, hey,
like you said earlier, like doing it in the small things, the simple things.
And it's just like anything else, like starting to work out or eat healthy. At first, it's like, feels like a beast. You know, you're just like, oh, I don't know if I can do this, but 1 mile turns into 2 to 3, and then before you know it, it's like second nature. Like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And I'm not saying like some people say sorry so much. It's like they're saying sorry for existing. No, but like recognizing like, wow, when I was short with them earlier, like I probably hurt their feelings and I should make sure that they are okay and that I didn't offend them and hurt them, and then it just kind of becomes more easy, I guess. But like I said, like what you do, like what you feel like you need to do is a choice between you and, you and the Lord. Like if you're like, feel that conviction of like, I need to ask for forgiveness. And then in the Bible, it says like, if you are going to like make an offering and you realize like, oh my gosh, my brother has an offense towards me, or, you have hurt someone, it's so important to the Lord that we make things right with people that he's like, hey, before you come and bring that offering to me, like go back to your brother and fix things with them, and I just, when you can live with that level of like, I just want to make sure things are good because with us, you know what I mean? Then it just becomes like more second nature, I feel like, and then you're just making sure you're asking for forgiveness from people like in your family, even if you're like, gosh, you know what? I probably should say I'm sorry for that or see how I made them feel about that.
For sure.
And I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, you've gone around for the last 40 years and you've offended every single person and now you're going to have to like be writing forgiveness letters for the rest of your life. No, but just realizing like that your actions do have consequences or reactions in others and what that does.
Yeah.
And like I said, though, once you have said, hey, like, I'm really sorry. Can you forgive me? Like the ball's in their court.
Yeah.
They may say no.
Yeah.
They're like, no, I don't forgive you.
Yeah.
That then becomes between them and the Lord. You know what I mean? That's then their choice.
For sure.
They get to deal with that, but you've really then been released from that.
Yeah. That's good.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know if it made sense.
No, it makes so
When I
so much
listen
sense.
back to it, I'm like, okay.
Maybe it did
But what I'm saying, I'm like, I'm trying to bring this full circle, but I
Yeah.
feel like I made a half circle and I don't know how to bring it home.
That's just called ADHD. Your brain's going all over the place. It's okay though. We love you.
Oh, thanks.
We love you so much.
Thank you so much.
You're the best.
But yeah, I don't know, like, I think there's something about being able to say you're sorry though, that is so freeing.
Oh, it's powerful.
And feels really good, actually.
sure.
You think it's going to feel like gross maybe, or like, oh, I'm going to have to admit when I'm wrong.
It brings freedom
So
to
much
you.
freedom because
Yeah.
you're just like, I know that I have said what I need to say.
Yeah.
I've done what I can do. And it releases you from that feeling of being like, that you have to be perfect. Like if I mess up, I can say that I'm sorry.
Yeah.
you know, and I think that, like I said, it was super revolutionary for me with my kids. Like when Gabby was, because she's our first one, and I realized like, oh, I can't be a perfect mom.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have to say sorry, or she's going to see things or hear things, and I'm going to have to be like, oh my gosh, you know what? That wasn't really a good example. I'm really sorry. That was probably more humbling for me personally than anything. Because I was like, oh, I want this little sweet girl to think I'm perfect, and I'm not. And I'm going to have to say sorry.
Yeah.
But, and I think too, like kids are a really good example on how to forgive quickly.
Yeah.
Because if you go to your kid, right?
For sure.
Like when I sit down with Elsie or Gabby and I'm like, Mommy's really sorry. Like they will literally hug me. Elsie will grab my whole face, kiss me, be like, oh, Mommy, I just love you so much. Of course, I love you. I love you. And I'm like, you're so sweet, because they're so quick to forgive.
They are.
And that is really, if we could learn from that.
Yeah.
Like our kids just being so like,
it's because they're humble. They're not prideful.
And they don't have years and years of wounds,
calluses
piled
built up.
upon, thankfully, thank
So
God,
true.
Because I want our kids to be able to be kids. But, when we have years and years of things, it's a little more like we have to.
It's so true. Well, that was so good.
I don't know. Was it?
So good. Yeah, no, I really.
If you're like, what in the world? So a couple things. Let's just say, before we finish, just in case people are like, what happened?
What did we just talk about?
Forgiveness in marriage. So being quick to forgive. What forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. It's not a step backwards, and it's not weakness. It's freeing, it's moving forward, and it's brave.
Yeah.
It's brave to forgive.
It is.
And I think I read this one, but it just says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as Christ, God, forgave you. And I think about how it's like bitterness, anger, all those things. It's like they just hold you back, you know?
And well, that's a great way of saying it. They hold you back.
No,
they don't hold. They're not holding anybody else back.
Like when I'm super mad at you, I'm holding myself back more than I'm holding you back.
When someone's mad at me for something in this world, it doesn't affect me, really.
Unless it's me. Then it really affects you.
Yeah, that's
I'm just kidding.
It's because we live in the same house. but really, like if someone else is feeling all those ways about me, like at the end of the day, it's not going to affect me.
It affects them, though.
It affects them the most.
Yep.
And the same thing, if I feel that way, like it's going to hold me back and it's going to keep me from all the things that it could be doing. But I think this was a great episode. I really appreciate this conversation.
Not to toot my own horn, but
sorry, my voice is so hoarse today. And if I really, really talk, it's like I sound like I'm going through puberty. So.
Not going to let you talk. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us this week at Young, Dumb, and in Love. We would love to hear from you so we can unpack all the things you're wondering or thinking. Make sure you subscribe, and we will see you next week at Young, Dumb, and in Love.